Hello, welcome back to the video lecture series for Introduction to the Art of Programming using Scala. We've just gone through a chapter where we're talking about polymorphism, and we've introduced a project that we want to work on here in these videos. But for most of the chapter I've used kind of simple little examples to illustrate things. I actually want to spend a few videos now just working on the project and doing live coding. And a lot of this is not going to relate to the polymorphism. Some places polymorphism will come out, and I'll address it where it does, but kind of in the flow of things, I want you to see the act of programming. So basically, I'm going to spend a few videos where I'm just coding for you and talking you through the coding. So if we pull back up our code, you might remember we have a number of classes that we've made. We did have some subtyping going on in here. But fundamentally, the project that we're working on is a client-server type of architecture that is being used, supposed to be used for a digital classroom. Okay, that's what we're going for with this piece of software. Now, so I've created a client main, which has a main in it, server main, which has not only the main in it, also has a list of semesters. And right now, this is about all that we have here. Now, eventually this application is supposed to be network-based. And so really the server is going to be one program and the client is going to be another. They're going to be run completely independently. And after the server is started up, multiple clients will be able to connect through the network. Unfortunately, we don't know how to do networking yet. So I need to do something, at least in the short term, that will allow me to run this program and have a client and have it talk to a server. And so the way I'm going to do this is, in many ways, this is a horrible hack, but we don't know enough to do this in much of a better way. So I'm actually going to, inside of my client main, one of the things that I am going to do is to spawn off a server. And I'll do this probably as one of the last things that I do. Server main dot main, and I'll go ahead and pass it null. So I'm calling the main method that's in here. I'm giving it null arguments. Right now we aren't doing any argument processing. Like I said, this is a quick and dirty way to make it so that when I run the client, the server runs too. And we can put in some print statements to demonstrate that that is indeed happening if we do this. And so if I come to the client main and I run it, I get running client, running server, and everything terminates. Now the client is supposed to bring up a GUI. So inside of here, I'm going to go ahead and create myself a frame, and it will be a main frame. I need to import that. I could do the Control-Shift-O thing, but I'm going to use almost everything from Swing. And I'm going to use a whole bunch of things from Swing event. You notice here that, so technically this is scala.swing._, but one of the default imports is scala._, so I can leave off the Scala here. And then this is scala.swing.event, and once again, since I've imported everything from Swing, I can just import the event and that package and everything inside of it, and that works fine. So what do I want this to do? Well, let's do a few things. Title. It actually sounds kind of an ambitious title for us. I almost feel like I'm setting us up to do too much, but hey, we'll see how this all goes. And down here, after we run it, and now if I were to do this, I get a GUI. In fact, for the purposes of the video, let's go ahead and make it so that it centers on the screen when it pops up. Contents. What is this GUI going to look like? Well, the main piece of data that we have over here is our semesters, and so I'd like the student to be able to click on a semester and bring up information for that semester, and actually whoever the user is. At least right now I'm thinking mainly of the student, but remember we actually have two types of users here. We have both a student and an instructor. We're also going to need options for things like logging in. You really shouldn't be able to do much of anything until you're logged in and authenticated with the system. So, how about we just go with a, I'm trying to decide. The simplest way to do this would probably be a new border panel. And then, let's go ahead and inside of, where am I going to want to have this import? What's a good scope for it? And I could do this right here. Swing border panel dot position dot underscore. That way I can use the short names north, south, east, and west. Layout plus equals, well, I want to add a semester list in the west. And this is where it's easy enough for me to make my semester list here. No, list view. Okay. And so I add that into the west. I will want to embed it inside of a scroll pane. So why am I apprehensive about this approach? Well, if we run this, okay, that actually looks pretty good. It's taking up a reasonable amount of space, and that doesn't look too bad. For right now, I'll happily leave that the way that it is. When you click on a semester, you should, so if we look, what information does a semester have? Well, a semester has a set of courses inside of it. And there's a part of me here that wants to go looking into borders and stuff like that, but I really just don't feel like that's a good use of our time at this point. So I want to have it so when you click on a semester, it brings up the courses. When you click on a course, it should bring up more information associated with that course. Based on that, there's a part of me that says that what goes out in the west is not just a scroll pane of the semester list, it's going to be two lists. And so we could have a new grid panel that is a 1 row, 2 columns grid panel. Oops. That did need the arrow west, and that doesn't. And the other thing that goes in here is not the semester list, but a course list. Okay. Let's run this, see what it looks like. Okay, list. You know what? I am already feeling the need to make this a little bit bigger, at least across. I'm pretty good with the 600 up and down for now. Okay, that works fairly well. I might actually take it down to about 980 for the purposes of producing videos. Okay, that looks really good. We will need to have a menu bar on here. So menu bar equals new menu bar, contents plus equals new menu, standard first menu, a file menu, contents plus equals new separator. Why? Because I like to separate out my exit. So if they do that, they get system.exit. Actually, let's just copy, paste. Yeah, we'll probably have to come back and revisit that in just a bit. Here's our file, a login and exit. Okay, so we have a beginnings of our simple GUI here. How are the server and the client going to talk to each other? So ideally, what we're going to wind up having is having it so that the user does a login that sends some information to the server. The server has to verify that whatever information was typed in at the login is actually correct, and you have a user with that name. And then the client needs to be able to ask for information. So for example, the server has these semesters in it. The client needs to be able to ask for that information. So how about we now, this is kind of a Java style naming scheme, which normally in Scala I would avoid. I would make this like the local semesters, and I would have this just be semesters. However, in this case, it turns out that this is going to wind up being a network call. And while I'm perfectly fine following the standard Scala naming schemes for non-network calls to give me some transparency, when it's going over the network, that has a higher cost to it, and so I would actually rather have it so that I would rather have it so that this is explicitly, in fact I'll even put parentheses there so that we can hopefully explicitly require that as well. Make it very explicit that this is a call that's going on there, in which case when you log in, what's going to happen is that you create your you ask for the semesters and you fill in this list. So maybe that would be, we'll go ahead and we'll create a login function. Leave ourselves a little note so that we can remember what we're going to have to do here. But at the very least, I should be able to get the semesters, and I want to take my semester list and set the list data equal to that. Of course, right now you can run it can show you that it doesn't crash when I do that, but it doesn't do much of anything either because I don't have any semesters. So just to make it so that we have something to look at here, okay, I am going to make a new semester and I'm going to add it on to the head of the semesters list. Of course, our semester doesn't have much of anything inside of it at this point, but if I run this and I log in, boom, now we have this showing up here. That doesn't print out very nicely. I would like this to print out much more nicely than that. So it turns out that what's going on here, how did this string get created? Well, this is actually the result of a default method. We can, if we want, we can come inside of here into the server main. And if I print out the head of the list, and then just to make it explicit, I'm going to print out the head of the list to string. I can actually run just the server here. You can see that that same type of thing is exactly what we get here. And when you print an object, what's happening is it's implicitly calling toString. Now, I'm not printing it, I'm adding it into a list, but list does the exact same thing that the print line does. It says, oh, hey, this is an object, I need a string representation of it so that I can display it nicely, so it calls the toString method. So if we want this to display nicely, we need to put in a toString method. And this toString method is going to return a string. And at least to start with, I could just do something like that. Now, this has an error, and this is a very important error for us in this chapter, because it has these warnings about how, or these says it overrides this and overrides that. This is one of these cases where you look at class semester and you're like, I'm not inheriting from anything. I shouldn't be overriding anything. But remember that by default, everything that is in Scala is doing some inheritance. Every time you define a class in Scala, it actually inherits from a type called anyRef. You'll see more about anyRef in the next chapter, and it turns out that anyRef inherits from any, and the toString method is actually part of any, and that's what makes it safe to call toString on any type in Scala. So I want to override that, and now that's happy. Quite honestly, I would rather not have this just say semester. I would rather have it be something like year, and then maybe a semester, year, yeah, so year, season, quarter, let's call it SEM, and make it so that when we build a semester, we have to pass those things in, which makes that happy. Now, why a string instead of a number? The reason I'm going with that, even though all years will be numbers, I'm going with the string here just because it does provide flexibility. If for some reason, so for example, if you were only using 2-digit numbers and you wanted to have data from 2008, well, then that would be 08. And 08 is not a happy int. If you actually type that in, you get a number in octal, and you can't have an 8 in octal, so you get an error there. The string just gives you the flexibility of having things like leading zeros if you want to have them, and I could definitely see how some schools might have some different settings for this that aren't as nicely represented. And so now, if we run this, when we click login, I get 2012 fall is listed there. other options that we would potentially have, though some of these aren't available to the student, they'd only be available to the instructor, would be things like the ability to add a new semester or add a new course. Those should definitely go into here, and then they will be set to inactive. Let's just go ahead and do a cut and paste here. So for the login, it's after login. Actually, let's put these in a whole separate menu, why don't we? Contents plus equals new menu. Instructor options. Add semester. Add course. And I'm going to disable that to start with. No. And put in stubs for those methods with to-dos inside of them so that we know that they have to be done later. And so we have this menu, and you can't select it. If you were to log in as an instructor, we would enable that menu for you. Though this does beg an interesting question, how do we make it so that the login here has the ability to enable this? We need to have a name for it. Okay. In case you're wondering, I hit Control-Shift-F, which is the auto formatting to re-indent everything. And now if I wanted to, under here, I have the ability, in addition to doing a login, and just for now, to show that I can do it, so this time, when we log in, now we have those options in there. Okay, so that's kind of a nice little start to this. We'll come back in the next video and we'll write some more code and extend our functionality and hopefully get this so that we, I want to go through a few videos so that we can get this so that you kind of have a feel for how it's going to work, and at least get to the point where we have courses and we have maybe an activity in them so that we can start thinking about what goes under those activities. And we can also do hard code in a few users, maybe one student user and one instructor user, and actually put in the login. But those things will wait until another video. So that's it for now, and we'll see you again soon.